Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about Stockholm Syndrome. Now, if you're in a narcissistic abuse community, you've probably heard this word many a times, or maybe you're new to the community and today is your first time hearing it through me. So I definitely want you guys to have a clear understanding of what Stockholm Syndrome is, okay? By the end of this video. And this is one of the videos I'm going to request that you guys share because people really need to get this information, all right, as it relates to narcissistic abuse. And we'll get into it a little further after we get into this definition, the other scenarios and setups to where it can happen, all right? So let's start with the definition of what Stockholm Syndrome is. What is it? It's a term that we use in psychology, and it's basically describing emotional bonding between an abuser and the victim. Or originally, it was describing the emotional bonding between captors and captives. So let's go back and get to where this is coming from. It's derived or coined by a criminologist and a psychiatrist named Niels Bejerot on August 23rd in 1973. He assisted a police officer during a bank robbery in Stockholm, which is the capital of Sweden, all right, in which 4 employees, 3 of them female and 1 male, were held hostage by 2 captors for 6 days. Now, what they came to find out is during this relatively short time with the bank robbers, those that were held in captive actually grew an attachment to the captors. They had sympathy and empathetic feelings for their captors. And this was based off of the sprinkles of kind acts of kindness that the captors showed to the captives, or those that were held in hostage. So for some reason, even though the captors were holding these people in hostage because they had sprinkled in these kind acts, the people almost let those kind acts basically overshadow the fact that, hey, whether you're giving me kind acts or not, you're holding me hostage here. This isn't right. But because they had in their hostages' minds sprinkled in this type of mercy and showed the acts of kindness, they were giving the captors a pass. Okay, we can almost relate this to having sympathy for the villains in the movies. Like remember the Batman movie and the Joker? A lot of people get down with the Joker. They're like connecting with the Joker for all kinds of reasons, of course, but it's similar. It's a similar type of concept, like when we're attaching ourselves to the villain. We're empathizing with them. Okay, so that's basically where it stems from, a bank robbery that happened in Sweden, and then those hostages grew a liking to the people that were holding them hostage. So psychologists wanted to figure out, hey, is this an isolated thing? Or is this something going on in other areas? And they came to find out that this wasn't an isolated thing, that human beings do this in other setups. And they determined those other setups would minimally be during narcissistic abusive relationships, during domestic violence situations, during childhood abuse, incest, rape, cult type setups, and prison camps. When there's like a pimp and a prostitute set up, and prisoners of war. But it really has no bounds. This can happen in any setup, basically, where there's a person that has a position of control and authority over someone else. All right? But before we get into that and the 4 things that must be present for Stockholm Syndrome to be going on in a situation, let's go a little further back into Stockholm Syndrome. So now that we know that the term got coined out of, the bank robbery in Sweden, there's another fact that you need to know about Stockholm Syndrome. We've all done it. We've all done it. Because Stockholm Syndrome is something that happens with a newborn baby. It's like one of the first things that we do when we're born is we experience this Stockholm Syndrome because we're in a vulnerable situation and we feel threatened now that we are born into this life and world, and we need to attach to someone to give us that comfort, and that's typically, our mother or the main caregiver that we're giving to as newborn babies. So psychiatrists believe that we revert back or regress back to that state when we experience the Stockholm Syndrome, later in any other periods of life outside of that newborn phase. So we've all done it. We've all done it. But when we did it as a newborn baby, that was, out of a necessity that was, healthy for us to do in that situation. But when we're doing it later in life, it's because we're in an abusive or derogatory or threatening situation, okay? So now we're going to talk about the 4 things that must be present, are basically the conditions that are said to need to be present in order for Stockholm Syndrome to be operating, within that connection of the 2 or more people. Number 1, there has to be a perceived threat to the captive's existence, and they believe that the captor will carry out the threat. So we can go back to the original instance at the bank robbery scene where the robbers took the hostages, and perhaps, they had guns and all this stuff, and they're threatening your life. So yes, they were in a perceived threat, and of course they could fathom that, these people might actually harm me. But let's go ahead and relate it to narcissistic abuse. What would that look like? The perceived threat to your existence. That will look like when the mask drops and you see their true selves. Because before that point, you're in a love bomb state with them and everything is pretty much all good, even though they're actually have already begun abusing you. You're just unaware of it yet because it hasn't triggered the negative emotions or your negative senses. You're enjoying this love bomb, so you're not really seeing the abuse for what it is yet. But that's when you're going to start seeing it. When that mask drops, that's when the threat actually begins right there. And now you are psychologically triggered in your negative senses. Perhaps the narcissist lost their temper. Maybe they stood you up, they were supposed to do something for you and they just ghosted, Maybe they physically attacked you. They got verbally abusive with you, called you out your name, put you down for the things that they were saying were great about you. All of a sudden now they're finding, faults with it. Basically, they crossed your boundaries in somewhere, in some shape or form, and you're feeling, you went from feeling safe and nurtured to now feeling unsafe and unnurtured. You're feeling disrespected. You're feeling violated. And now that can lead to you feeling threatened. Now, it may or may not lead to you feeling necessarily abused at that point. It really depends, because some people will leave after that mask drop. And then, as we know, others of us aren't quite sure yet. We're not sure who the narcissist is when we see them doing this. And this leads to number 2, where the captor experiences small acts of kindness from the abuser. So how would this look? You're basically going from one end of the extreme to another. 1 minute they're treating you good, and in a healthy manner, and then in another sense, they're treating you in an unhealthy manner. And this can lead to a lot of confusions. You know, some people will jump ship just based off of, hey, whether you're treating me good, sometimes you're treating me bad right now. I don't appreciate that. That's over. You know, those are my boundaries. And then some of us will try to determine who the abuser is. And then what'll happen is we'll believe the goodness is sincere. So when they behave bad and those threats return, we're minimizing that behavior. And then we're increasing or maximizing the small acts of kindness. And we're giving that more weight than it should be. Yeah. And I've counseled a lot of people, and I've seen it over and over. They will describe their situation with the narcissist and tell me about all these horrible things that the narcissist did to them. And then in between, there would be sprinkles of positive or the small acts of kindness, and that will stand out to the person. They will keep going back to it. They'll be like, okay, well, Lakia, he did this, but he did that, or she did this, but she did that, and they keep going back to those sprinkles because they are giving it more weight, and they're letting that, you know, overpower, or giving them a sort of tunnel vision where they're not looking at the bigger picture. We can go back to the original instance with the bank robbers. Like I said, you know, no matter how kind the bank robbers were being to the people, they were holding the people hostage. So this is what we're talking about here, where the abuser is sprinkling those small acts of kindness just enough to keep you from getting out of their grasp or getting away from them, and then they're turning back to their true selves, which is their abusive nature. And all of it is abusive, because the sprinkles of small kindness is a manipulation. It's a manipulation. It's a mind fuck. You know? So that's the second part. The third part is the captor is isolated from any other perspective than those of the captors. So what does this look like? And by the way, I've made a video like a month ago about abusive personalities and how they like to isolate their victims or the survivors. So you can definitely go back and look at that, and I will add it into the description for those of you that want to listen to that video. But basically, the people, places, and things that keep you strong and that could get you out of the grip of this person, they want you to stay away from that, of course, because why? That's going to interfere with their agenda and what they have going on. They don't want you to get free, you know? So this is where you can see them trying to strain you or turn you against your friends and family. This is called like a divide and conquer, where they're trying to turn people against each other and that type of thing, or plant seeds in your head to manipulate your perceptions of the people that are actually there for you, or just downright lie on people and to try to turn you and break you away from the things that are keeping you healthy and strong, your support system. They might even go against your religious values, twist it up, and, you know, because prayer and meditation, that keeps you healthy, right? So they don't want you to have these things. Like I remember when my ex-narcissist, the one that I married, I had discernment that I probably should not have been marrying him. I had that discernment about it, but I didn't listen to it. I came to him and I was like, you know what, let's get marriage counseling. And he didn't want to do it. Of course, because this is a part of the number 3, isolating any perspectives outside of his. He didn't want that marriage pastor to say, hey, you guys aren't really ready for marriage yet. I think you guys should hold off. You need a little bit more work in this area. You don't want to hear that, because his agenda was to, you know, go ahead and get this marriage popping and really tie each other into one another. So he didn't want to hear that, okay? So part 4 is where the captive perceives they have the inability to escape. All right. So obviously in a bank robbing situation, if someone has a gun to your head and they're telling you sit down, be still, tying you up and whatever, you have that inability to escape. But how would that relate to narcissistic abuse? Well, survivors can feel stuck in that relationship. They can feel trapped. They can feel tied up. They can feel hopeless. How do these things come to pass? Well, maybe they got married. Maybe they had children. Maybe it's due to finances. The narcissist could be the breadwinner, and it could be a mom that stays home with her children and she feels like, okay, if I leave this narcissist, I'm going to be homeless. I'm not going to have any money. And they're just thinking about all the instability. You might not even be married. You might just be cohabitating with them. And it's like, okay, how do I get them out? Their name is on the lease, or I have to go and be inconvenienced. I don't have the money to move. These things can happen. And then it could be literally from fear. Narcissists, they can be aggressive. They're abusive personalities. So you might fear that this person is going to beat you up or even kill you. You could have a fear for your life. And then if they achieve number 3 of isolating you, you may feel as though you have nowhere else to go. And I'm putting feel in quotes just because you do have places that you can go. Even if you are that stay-at-home mom in that abusive situations, I've been there and I've gone to the safe house. There are places set up. I'm just going to put that in here right now, plug that in. There are places that you can go, and you can go with the clothes on your back. And you don't have to tell them your husband's name. They're not going to get all in your business. They're just going to know that you are a woman that's fleeing domestic violence. They will give you food. They will give you shelter. They will give you a place to stay and help you get on your feet. Whatever you need to do. But you don't have to stay in a situation and risk losing your life. So I just wanted to plug that in there. You do have options. A lot of times we're just unaware of our options, number one. And then we may have this tunnel vision. And there are 24 hours helplines. And they will actually connect you with your local resources and let you know where you can go locally. So even if you don't have access to a computer to Google this and figure it out and all these type of things, there are organizations, nonprofits out here that are set up just for this. So never feel stuck, okay? So, but yeah, the victim will feel stuck. It could be through manipulation and bullying. If I do this, that will happen. So a person feels like they have to stay in line with this or else that will happen. And that is something negative. That's something unfavorable, something that they don't want to happen. It could be something as simple as I have children with a narcissist. I'm going to play stupid. I'm going to play along with this and that because I want the narcissist to be in my children's life. It could be something that simple. Someone, using their cognitive dissonance, letting the narcissist gaslight them. And they may even be knowing that the narcissist is doing these things, but they're doing it because they just want their children to know their father in a certain sense. So, there all types of things can be going on in a survivor's mind. All right. So I want to sum up those 4 conditions real quick, just so that, we're just staying organized here about the Stockholm Syndrome and how you can recognize if it's present, in your situation. So the first thing that we were saying is, of course, there's a perceived threat to your existence and you believe that the narcissist will carry out the threat. Number 2 is when the narcissist is doing small acts of kindness sprinkled in with bad behaviors. And then we're taking the kindness as genuineness and sincerity. Okay, and then we're magnifying it. And then when they're doing the bad stuff, we're minimizing that. All right. So number 4 is when the narcissist or the toxic person is able to isolate you from other perspectives, including your own. Let's add that in there. But basically your support system and the things that you can lean on outside of them. They want you to be solely reliant on them. Okay. And number 4 is that feeling of helplessness or perceiving the inability to be able to escape. Okay, guys. and we went over that. But, it's very interesting. It's definitely very interesting, but it's all psychological, as you can see. You're put into this hostile environment, and your primitive survival instincts that you had when you were a newborn baby start to be triggered. And you start, working from that stance. And then over time, the victims become so grateful for the small mercies or those sprinkles of kindness from the abusers that they perceive any show of kindness or affection to mean that the danger has passed, at least for the moment. So it's giving you that relief, and they can relax. But, it's always temporary, guys. That's the whole thing about abuse. The cycle always comes back around. It always comes back around. So I hope that this is helping someone understand Stockholm Syndrome and how that operates, as far as narcissistic abuse goes. All right. So if this video resonates with you, you can go ahead and hit the like button. If you haven't done so already, you can subscribe to the channel. I do upload videos quite frequently. Please share this video. People really need to get this information. And check the description out for the coaching that I offer and the therapeutic books that I have on sale for Amazon as well, if you want to get some more therapy out of this channel, or beyond the videos that I post up here. All right, guys. So until next time, please be safe. Please be safe. And I hope that, you can see where chances are happening in your situation. And if you're out of it, be very thankful. Be very thankful. But at least, you're getting educated on this now, and, it'll help you moving forward. And it'll definitely help you in connecting the dots from the past. All right. So until next time, guys, please take care.